Hi, welcome back to the newest video snippet from Follet, the video novel. Today we're going to read the third part of chapter 12, and once again, I knew this was coming. This little selection here is not appropriate for work or children. Nope, no way. But you might enjoy it. I hope you do. If you're ready, we'll begin. Here we go. They got into the caddy. Which way? North, Follet. I'll tell you when. They drove north along the shore of the lake for about 10 minutes. A sprawling country house was lit up to their left. Park here, Meri told him. I've got to bring somebody some water. I can see she's burning alive. They parked, and Meri led Follet down the driveway to the big house. They walked up a stairway to a second-floor veranda that encircled the entire house. Meri led him to the last windows on the left at the back of the house, overlooking the lake. It was a comfy-looking chaise lounge, and Meri pulled it so that whomever sat in it could look out the window. She motioned for Follet to sit, and she put her finger to her lips to signal him to make no sound. And then the dream began, and she walked through the wall and over to the bed. And in a soft, soft voice, Meri sang to the sleeping woman, "When you close your eyes and you go to sleep, and it's down to the sound of a heartbeat, I can hear the things that you're dreaming about when you open up your heart and the truth comes out." The woman stirred in her dream and opened her eyes. She held Meri, who was dressed in the dream in a dough-gray cotton camisole and a pair of screamingly bright red and royal blue jammy shorts printed with big hibiscus flowers and made of what looked like t-shirt material, in her gaze, and smiled. The woman on the bed was naked. She had silver blonde hair with long bangs in front and long enough to touch her breasts if she were standing. She had a slight sunburn that showed that she wore a V-neck t-shirt when she worked. Her shoulders and upper arms were thick and strong, and her forearms as well. Her breasts were large and full, with large brown areoles, probably 1.5 inches in diameter. Her nipples, which were hardening at the sight of Meri, were thick. She was high-waisted with round hips. Her pubic hair was trimmed for a bikini. Her legs were those of a woman who tested her muscles through physical labor. She might have played field hockey or rugby during her school days. Meri walked over to the bed. The woman rose, moved to the middle of the bed, and knelt there, erect with her knees slightly parted for balance, waiting for her. Meri slid onto the edge of the bed and met the woman in the middle of the bed, kneeling erect in front of her, almost touching. Almost touching. Meri moved her head forward almost imperceptibly. The woman did the same. Their noses touched. Meri moved her head slightly up and down, nose kissing, asking, inviting. The woman tilted her head slightly to her right and moved her lips to touch Meri's. This first kiss closed both women's eyes, the barest touch of lips on lips. They broke the kiss and moved their heads back to gaze on one another. The woman softly smiled. Meri smiled and stuck her wet tongue just between her lips and folded her lower lip, her upper teeth catching her lip. The woman reached for Meri and held Meri's head between her hands. She moved forward and kissed Meri again, lips gently pouting and pressing on Meri's. The woman placed her lips to kiss Meri's upper lip, touching Meri's top and bottom. With this kiss, Meri reached to touch the woman's shoulder. And with Meri's touch, the woman softly gasped in pleasure. Meri drew closer and slid her left leg forward so that her thigh thrust between the woman's parted legs. Meri spread her legs for balance and so that she could push her moans against the woman's left leg. They held each other, and Meri moved her mouth close to the woman's ear. The woman giggled. Meri whispered again. Follet saw the woman blush at Meri's words, but she spoke so softly that Follet could not understand what she'd said. And the woman moved her lips, saying something that made Meri smile. Meri held the woman closely, but loosely. The two lovers moved slowly, experimenting with their touches, the sweet softness of each other. Meri moved her face away from the woman's ear, whispering no more, so that she could look into the woman's eyes. Follet could see Meri respond to the woman's words as strongly as to her touch, and the woman closed her eyes at Meri's proposals and nodded shyly. Meri moved her lips to the woman's cheek and kissed the smoothness between the corner of the woman's lips and the corner of her eye. And then Meri breathed so intimate a fancy, so capricious a whimsy, that the woman's eyes opened and she turned her head in surprise, her lips brushing Meri's in delicious agreement. Meri laughed, spoke another word, and then 3 more. The 2 women embraced again, a delicate kindness in their touching. The woman then spoke to Meri, and Meri nodded, her mouth falling slightly open, her tongue moistening her lips. The excitement between the 2 was palpable. Meri revealed herself to the woman, and the woman opened her mouth in a silent "oh," and took Meri's right hand between hers and placed Meri's palm on her breast, so Meri would feel her pounding heart. The woman's burning passion stunned Meri. As she felt the woman's heart hammering beneath her hand, Meri pulled her hand away for a split second, as if the touch were fire. Then she put her hand back, slowly, cautiously, as if their touch were a conduit, channeling, surging, unexpected but once felt adored completion, her heart to Meri's. Meri felt the connection and faltered for a moment, and then put her left arms around the woman, embracing her while her right hand lay nestled on the woman's breast. Meri held the woman, still, motionless, while a Chinook wind of desire warming her from the edges of her skin to the core of her. And as the blast of longing heated their embrace, both Meri and the woman reached for each other, hands moving to choose each other as her own. The woman moved her hands down to touch Meri's neck with her right and to Meri's shoulder with her left. Meri moved her head to kiss the woman's cheek, lips puckering softly, moving leisurely toward the woman's ear. When Meri reached the woman's jaw, she lined it with a string of small kisses, meandering toward the woman's lobe. Meri reached her goal and captured the woman's succulent tissue between her lips. She let it go and licked her lips and captured the soft skin again. Meri's wet lips pressed on the woman there, opening slightly to let her tongue touch the lobe. Meri moved her hand to the woman's neck, softly pressing her closer, and moved her mouth to kiss the woman's ear, mouthing up her helix, lips pressing kisses on the ridge of her antihelix, tongue teasingly pushing into her concha. As Meri kissed her ear, the woman let her head fall back, opened her mouth in a silent moan, and closed her eyes. Meri then moved her mouth to the woman's neck, covering her from jaw to shoulder with tiny kisses. Meri let her left hand stray from the woman's shoulder to rest on the top of her chest, just above where the bulge of her breast began. The woman came to herself again. She lowered her chin, not wanting to break the chain of Meri's adoration. She moved her left hand to touch Meri's back and then slide under the strap of Meri's camisole to touch her shoulder. The woman let her fingers move across Meri's skin and then slipped the strap off Meri's right shoulder. As Meri continued to kiss her neck, now opening her mouth to add the pleasure of her tongue to that of her lips, the woman slid her hand to Meri's left shoulder to free the other of her camisole straps. The woman moved her hand to the middle of Meri's back and found that the cami buttoned down the back. Meri broke from the kisses, tilted her head to the left, and moved her mouth to kiss the tiny cleft at the base of the woman's throat. The woman unbuttoned the first button at the top of the camisole, and then the next. Her hand was almost shaking with the eagerness and desire, and then the next. Meri moved her lips to mouth the woman's collarbones, first her left and then her right. The woman freed another button, and another, and another. She finally reached the last and freed it too. She let her fingers stray to touch the small of Meri's back and slipped lightly into the top of the cleft between Meri's ass cheeks before moving upward between the now parted fabric of Meri's camisole to trace the hard vertebrae just underneath Meri's soft, soft skin. Meri moved her mouth down to the top of the woman's breast. 100 kisses. Gentle and arousing, while Meri placed the middle finger of her left hand to trace as lightly as a summer breeze the circle of her aureole. After Meri had circled the nipple, she placed her thumb below the aureole and her index finger above it, and pressing the slightest bit harder against the woman's breast, brought them together to lightly hold the nipple between them. Meri squeezed her thumb and finger together so softly, so softly. In time to the beating heart, she felt thunder in the woman's breast under her kisses. They slowly broke apart and knelt there, facing each other, glowing and feeling the powerful pull between them. The woman reached for Meri and slid the camisole down Meri's arms. Meri held her arms out to help. The 2 women embraced again, their breasts touching, nipples hardening on soft, soft skin. Meri and the woman kissed again, mouths opening, tongues flickering, full lips puckering to take the other inside. Their hands were not idle, searching, exploring, gently squeezing, roundness back to flank, to hips. Meri moved her hands to grasp the woman's ass and pull it to her. The woman slid out of Mary's embrace and lay back, spreading her legs. Meri knelt, sitting on her calves and feet, and the woman rested her parted thighs on Mary's. Meri laid the fingers of her right hand on the woman's hairy mound. She rubbed her finger through that curly hair and lightly ran her thumb from the rear of the woman's pussy to the front, a dancing touch, and then back and then again, coating the tip of her thumbs with the woman's juice. Meri arched her hand and brought her slick thumb up to touch the spot where the woman's labia met, just past the little hooded fleshy note. Meri moved her thumb in a circle, pushing the labia carefully apart to reveal a beautiful engorged clit. And then she moved her fingers and palms, touching the woman's thighs, and up to her belly, and then in a larger circle outside her hips, and then back to her hairy moans. Meri let her fingers move from their rest, index and middle fingers sliding back on the outside of the labia on the cleft at the top of the woman's thighs, clitoris to anus. The woman closed her eyes and moaned softly and placed her right hand on her left breast, gently squeezing and tracing the outline of her own areole. Meri leaned over the woman, and the woman wrapped her lower legs around Meri, resting the arches of her feet on the backs of Mary's thighs. Meri lowered her lips to kiss the woman, and as they kissed, Meri pushed her vulva against the woman's and rubbed up and down, and then dancing with her in small circles. The woman slipped her right hand to Mary's side to hold Mary's waist, while her left hand moved up from Mary's other side to caress Mary's shoulder blade. The woman began to move her hips against Mary's motions, and pushed and retreated, making Meri gasp with pleasure. They tribbed like this, and time lost any meaning for them. Their kisses became bolder and more passionate. Meri whispered to the woman between their kisses. The woman laughed and made a face, sticking out her tongue. Meri seemed to take this sauciness as a challenge. She rose above the woman, pushing her knee against the woman's vulva. The woman reached for Meri and wrapped her hands around Mary's thigh and pulled Mary's leg hard against her. Follet saw Meri curl her lip in disdain and pointed at the supine woman, now playing the role of the submissive. The woman pouted and pursed her lips in a voluptuous little scowl, beckoning Mary's dominance to give herself completely to the recumbent seductress. And when their roles had been reversed, the dominating mistress of the realm of the bed whispered, "Please." Meri raised her head, and the woman reached for the bedside table. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the drawer, but she could reach no further. She stretched her fingers and reached again, but she could only touch the edge of the drawer. "Please." Meri kissed the woman's juicy mouth once and broke away, leaning over to the bedside table, grasping the handle and pulling the drawer open. Meri reached in. She grabbed the first thing she laid her hand on, a small, purple thing about the length of her thumb, but about twice as wide, narrowing to a soft, flexible point with an indentation on one side. Meri held it in her hand, and where her thumb rested on the shaft, she felt a little bump. She pushed it, and it began to vibrate. She pushed it again, and the frequency of the vibrations decreased, while the power of the vibrations intensified. She thought. Meri had felt something else in the drawer. She reached back in and felt around until she had it. When she pulled it out, at first she was confused. It looked like a toy space gun, the barrel red and white, barber pole striped, arcing slightly toward the ribbed and bulbous end. The handle curved forward with two undulating protrusions that reminded Meri of a cucumber. She turned it over to examine it, and then Meri realized what it was. "Please." Meri rose, still kneeling, raising her ass off her feet. She spread her knees apart and put the handle of the space gun between her legs and maneuvered it to the lips of her pussy. She pushed it up and rolled it and pulled it out, and then with its slicken pushed it in again farther and farther until it was secure inside her. She clenched her muscles to hold it tight. Now the striped shaft pointed out in front of her like a swirling red and white cock. Meri would have preferred this strapless strap-on to have been purple and gold, her school colors, but it was the dreamer's dream. Meri reached for the purple thumb and turned it on. It buzzed, and Meri pushed the button 2 more times until the throbbing was slower and more intense. Meri laid the vibrator on the woman's vulva, marveling that she could hold it there. But if she took her hand away, the little trembler nestled right where it was needed. Meri leaned over the woman, and between her gasps and moans kissed her. The woman responded by wrapping her arms around Meri and holding on, riding the sensation. As she pulled Meri closer, the tip of the strap-on rubbed against the woman's wet slit. "Oh," she breathed. Meri moved her right hand to find the shaft of the dildo and guided into the woman's wetness. Meri pushed carefully, just a tiny movement of her hips. and the bulb at the end of the rod slipped into the woman. Meri pulled it out. The woman moved her hips forward, not wanting to allow the hardness to leave her. Meri pushed again, harder, and as she did so, the dildo on Meri's cunt pushed against her from the inside. Meri found that as she varied the direction of her thrust, especially up or down, the undulations in the handle buried deep within her pressured parts of her that Dr. Grafenberg would have appreciated almost as much as Meri did. The two women thrust and pushed and pulled apart. Faster, the woman whispered, and Meri pushed the little button on the vibrator, and the frequency of the buzzing increased. So did the speed of their coupling. Again and again and again and again. The woman breathed faster and faster, and her grasp on Meri grew tighter and tighter. And then the woman came, and came again, and Meri did too. Meri collapsed onto the woman, and the woman softly stroked Meri's face and covered her cheek and nose and mouth and eyelids with kisses. And the dream began to end. Meri found herself clothed, standing at the end of the bed, looking down on the sleeping woman. She was smiling in her sleep, and Meri smiled at her happiness. Meri turned and walked out through the wall, took Follet's hand, and pulled him to his feet. Follet leaned to her and kissed Meri's neck once softly, but with a promise of more. They hurried hand in hand down the stair, around the house and back to the caddy. Follet opened Meri's door for her, and she slid into the bucket. Follet walked around and got into the driver's side. He turned on the ignition and slowly pulled the car out onto the road, heading back to the way they had come.